This show has been brought to you by Smith's Detection and the National Air Traffic Controllers Association.
My voice is the voice that guides you home safely each and every day.
24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
I am the voice of the safest and most efficient airspace in the world.
I have to be 100% of the time.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am a professional air traffic controller.
Welcome to another one-on-one where we're thrilled today to have a conversation with Chicago Department of Aviation Commissioner Ginger Evans, who, as you all know, oversees one of the world's busiest airport system with oversight over O'Hare and Midway airports. As you also probably know, Ginger has announced that she's going to be leaving the Department of Aviation in Chicago effective August 1st. With that in mind, we wanted to get Ginger on the studio today to walk through a truly remarkable career, not only at Chicago and her leadership there, but being at the tip of the spear on some truly transformative projects with the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, with Denver, and truly across the globe through her work on consulting and working with airports. She's an engineer by trade. She's an absolutely fabulous resource. Ginger, thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you, Joel. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's dive right into Chicago, and then we'll ask you for some of your reflections on your time there and just your career working on, as I mentioned, transformative projects across the aviation industry. But if you will indulge me, I want to read what Mayor Emanuel said about you prior to announcing your departure from the city of Chicago. And it speaks to what his expectations were for you coming in for the city. When I appointed Ginger 3 years ago, I tasked her with specific goals to modernize our airports and strengthen our status as global transportation hub so that Chicago's distinguished airports would not only be the busiest, but the best. In a Herculean feat, accomplished in a small amount of time, Ginger has negotiated a historic $8.7 billion agreement to modernize O'Hare, opened 2 new runways and the first new gates in 25 years, undertaken the largest investment plan for Midway in nearly 2 decades, and attracted new airlines and services to make O'Hare not only the best connected airport in the nation, but the only American city to offer direct flights to all 6 major continents. That was your charge coming in. What are your reflections on how you've been able to do that in 3 short years?
Well, starting with a very energetic and intelligent leader in Mayor Emanuel, and following close behind that, the strength of the Chicago economy. Chicago is the only North American city in the top 20 of foreign investment. The foreign investment in Chicago exceeds the total of Miami, Atlanta, and Montreal combined. Very strong market. 118 foreign companies based there with over $100 billion of investment. 2 of the largest hubs in the country, American and United, with bases at O'Hare. Southwest, Midway is their largest hub. So very strong market, and basically getting the right team in place very quickly, the right plans in place very quickly, the rest, they say, is will soon be history.
So we were talking before we got on set about your plan coming into the mayor, a 4-year plan where you outlined exactly how you wanted to accomplish some of these things. The Midway project, certainly one that you undertook quickly. O'Hare Modernization Program, a pretty tough nut to crack. Before we kind of walk through the project itself, it's remarkable that you were able to bring all these disparate groups and parties together to come up with an agreement to move forward. Walk us through how you were able to get there overall, to put the pieces in place to get to yes with people with different points of view.
Yeah. Well, you start out with the squinty green eye shades. I spent that summer reviewing everything. There had been famously a lawsuit in 2011, and pretty much everything stopped after that. And there was opposition to the plan that was approved at that time. So in looking at that plan, it was very clear that with just a couple of tweaks, you could come up with a much better plan that suited the business purposes of our 2 hubs and let them expand their business, because after all, they were the ones who were going to pay for it. So with just a couple of tweaks in the airfield that I'll show you in a moment, we were able to create a tremendous opportunity, open up a vast amount of real estate for development, That was one key, was understanding you've got to look at it from the airline's viewpoint. What's going to help them be more efficient, help them drive revenue and efficiencies. The second part of it is that we didn't get overambitious. We didn't really try to redo everything. It was tempting to try to straighten out some of the roadways and move the central plant. It's always tempting to try to do a blank slate. But I've seen other large hubs try to look at the perfect plan, and quite frankly, it's just unaffordable. So we tried to reuse as much infrastructure as we could so that the investments required would be really strategic replacements, strategic renovations, not wholesale rebuild. So we tried to be very responsible in that way, and it worked.
It did. And so let's go to the slides real quickly to see exactly what you're doing there, what you were able to do. You mentioned on the front end getting those airfield improvements were absolutely essential in putting the infrastructure in place in order to talk about satellite concourses in a new international terminal and new gates throughout the facility. So let's walk through slide 2 if we can, Ginger. We'll start there and just kind of walk through the airfield overview and what you were able to do on the air side.
Yeah, in the early part of 2000, O'Hare came up with a very much needed plan to modernize O'Hare's famously inefficient historic airfield, which had 3 pairs of intersecting runways. Very inefficient, very unsafe, and they came up with a modern parallel runway configuration, which was approved in an environmental impact statement. What was left undone was the middle runway that you see on the north in light blue, runway 9C, and the extension of the runway just south of that, runway 9R. Those were left undone in terms of the agreement with the airlines, but they were clearly needed and clearly logical. What was not logical.
Let's move to slide 3, and we can start there. Yes.
So the original plan left the gold diagonal piece of runway that you see in place. It left the red famous taxiway AB that encircles the terminal complex in place. Those taxiways are both 55 years old. They are the textbook case of what FAA calls irregular geometry, real problem. And so by basically saying, gosh, we know how to build taxiways better than that today, let's rethink that. If you think about that real estate without those 2 taxiways there, you now have 450 acres of developable land right in the heart of Chicago, the huge economic engine that I described just a few moments ago. Tremendous opportunity. So just for a moment we said, just think of those taxiways as gone and what's possible. So
move on to slide 4 here.
So within actually 6 months, we had agreement with the airlines for $1.3 billion to build that last long international runway on the north, which has benefits for international traffic, most of which goes to the north, balances the airfield capacity, which helps air traffic, and also has tremendous noise benefits. So this was a really powerful asset that needed to move forward. So the $1.3 billion deal builds that runway, relocates a bunch of very old hangars and maintenance facilities to the north, and replaces those 2 taxiways that I showed a moment ago, the gold and red taxiways, with this straight north-south connector taxiway system that you see, which again opens up that real estate for expansion of the terminal. So this is what I call large-scale enabling projects to expand the terminals. And then in the center on the left, what you see is centralized de-icing pads. O'Hare was the only major snow airport in North America that didn't have de-icing pads. So this was very high priority. Again, talking to the airline operations folks, they wanted this thing. This will open in this year, December of this year. Very critical to efficient snow operations. So this was the $1.3 billion deal that opened up the possibility of, okay, now we've got all this real estate, what do we do with it? How do we benefit the growth plans for our airlines?
So you've enabled the development of the terminals, where we'll move to on the next slide to see a really exciting project we're moving forward with.
So this is the agreed phase 1 project that is included in the lease. This is what we call TAP, Terminal Area Plan. You notice in dark blue a new terminal where Terminal 2 sits today, and 3 new satellite concourses. This is that's about $6.1 billion. The other $2.6 billion that are in the deal basically renovate the other existing facilities. So again, I think a very responsible plan. The hook that really got the airlines excited was very early on as I looked at the condition assessment for O'Hare. What was really obvious about Terminal 2 was, number one, it was in terrible condition. 55 years old, very low ceilings, terrible customer service. If you could squint, you could maybe find a fire sprinkler. And importantly, it occupies some of the most valuable real estate on the planet. You're sitting on real estate that sits right between United's second largest hub and American's fourth largest hub. So everyone knows that the existing terminal for O'Hare farther off to the east is a disadvantage. People have to transfer terminals to connect. This basically puts your international operations right in the heart of what OAG calls the best connected airport in the United States and second best in the world. So this agreement to replace Terminal 2 was the initial agreement reached with the airlines. They could immediately see the value of that. And then from there, it was a matter of, okay, what shape and configuration and spacing do we need for the satellite concourses?
Excellent. So let's move on to the next slide, slide 6, and further, a 30-year plan for growth.
Yes, absolutely. And so basically, you keep marching to the west, taking advantage of that 450-acre development site, and you can, those 2 red concourses on the west, another 80 gates. Joel, I mean, that's after you've expanded O'Hare by 25% in this first phase. You add another 80 gates, and then you get the Western Terminal, very similar to the development of Atlanta over time, where when you have those Western concourses, you have to have another terminal to serve them from the west. Balances the surface transportation the same way we balanced the airfield north and south. So tremendously efficient. Again, I think a responsible development plan. Note that we also included in the plans, 3 hotels, 2 new hotels, and a refurbishment of the existing Hilton. And it's just a really terrific plan. I'm also very pleased that in the lease agreement we were able to gain agreement that there are some provisions for Phase 2. So, you're building phase 1, presumably traffic picks up. A representative from Delta yesterday at the Next Gen committee made comment that, airport infrastructure improvements do improve efficiencies. And he used LAX as an example. He said when LAX finished the new Bradley West complex, their taxi times immediately went down. So we will see those kinds of efficiencies. And LAX's growth went to, like 5%. Immediately after those improvements were made. That will happen here as well, but what we didn't want was to have that growth and then have to wait on Phase 2. So we got agreement for mitigation for Phase 1 in the lease agreement. We got agreement for $40 million to be used for advance planning and environmental reviews for Phase 2 before it's needed, so that you don't have that gap between finishing Phase 1 and moving on to Phase 2. So it's a very, we created a bridge in the lease agreement to the next phase of development.
So you've got a steady stream of path to growth, and there's not going to be delays along the way. You've got a plan in place for getting there without any...
What we didn't want to end up with in a 15-year lease was 10 years from now being in the same situation we are today, which is growth, no way to build gates.
Right, exactly. We have one more slide here. You can tout the international terminal and the promise that holds not only for your existing carriers, but obviously the other non-signatory the airlines at the facility as well.
Yes, and again, this global terminal, I can't overstate the significance of this. It will give you contiguous international gates to the terminal, walkable gates, very comfortable. You'll also be able to directly connect from international to domestic. This will be the most advanced, high-tech international terminal in the country when it is built. We'll take advantage of all the improvements that have been made, all the technologies that are now being tested by CBP, and some technologies that have been tested in Canada, where through the baggage identification and weight system, they'll be able to check your bag and you'll be able to go straight from international to your domestic gate without going through customs. Many of our
Huge
international passengers
benefit.
will be able to do that. Huge
benefit.
Best customer service on the planet. U.S. Customs is doing it in Canada, so why can't they do it here?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for walking through that, Ginger. I mean, it's a huge testament to the legacy you're leaving behind in Chicago. And it's not only a benefit for the people of Chicago, but as we all know, for the benefit of the aviation system, not only domestically, but internationally.
Yeah.
Having that plan, that well thought out plan and an executable plan moving forward, I think is going to show huge benefits throughout the aviation system. So well done to you and your team. As you get ready to depart Chicago, what are the lessons you're taking with you? I know there's clearly satisfaction with having this project done, but
Yeah.
What have you learned over the last 3 years?
Well, one thing that gives me great satisfaction is an emphasis that we place on safety. Always a touchstone for someone coming from the construction industry as I do. We really made a concerted effort to, I initiated the first, airport safety meetings. Our lease agreement requires cooperation from the airlines with an airport-wide safety management system. As far as I know, we're the first airport who's ever done that. I was able to hire a really well-qualified safety lead and a really well-qualified emergency management lead. So that emphasis on safety, I'm very, very proud of. And I was reminded during my time there that the workforce doesn't resist that, they welcome that because they see that as you care about me. You don't want me to get hurt. So opening that door was particularly satisfying to me personally. We also made major gains in aircraft noise. As you know, big issue around the country, and again, tackled that the first summer that I was there, tried to really understand it, did a lot of listening to the community, a lot of sessions with air traffic, and came up within a couple months of it with a 23-point action plan for noise, which is underway as we speak. We report on it monthly to the O'Hare Noise Compatibility Commission. Very proud of that. We were able to gain community acceptance and support for a rotation plan for nighttime noise. It's something that had never been done before. What I said to them, there's things we can't do. I mean, in peak periods at O'Hare, air traffic's in charge and no one's going to question them or ask them to do something different. But at night, when we have much lighter operations and people are much more sensitive to noise, let's do what we can for the nighttime to give people relief when they most need it. And then some of those operations might possibly be considered for off-peak times on weekends at a later date. Tremendous amount of effort was made by volunteer community representatives to understand that, to question it. We did 3 separate 6-month tests. And now we will go forward with a formal process to ask the community which of these 3 tests or which aspects of the 3 tests do you want to become the permanent plan, and then that will go forward to the FAA. Particularly proud of that achievement. A tremendous amount of work by our ops team, air traffic, the pilots were very cooperative. So, where you can, we have to show progress. And so I guess the other thing that you mentioned briefly was the emphasis on air connectivity. That was one of the charges that the mayor gave to me, was increase our connectivity to the world. Our international traffic had been flat for 10 years. I did a smart thing. I recruited Susan Kerlin from US DOT, who of course had the global Rolodex, and she's been trotting around for the last 2 years, and we've had tremendous success. 17 new routes announced just since this January, and last week, with the advent of the Ethiopian Air Service, we became the first United States city to serve all 6 inhabited continents. That's amazing. Which is quite an achievement. We're up there with London and Dubai and Doha and Johannesburg. So tremendous effort in that part. And because of the amount of foreign investment and our strong trade relationships with China, that was particularly important. So I'm proud of that as well. You ask about reflections on my career, and I'm at an age where I'm getting asked that question a lot, which is good. It makes you stop and think, and we do have an obligation to share what we've learned with those emerging professionals. And I guess when I look back, there are long periods of time when the industry is reorganizing, rethinking, and retrenching. And that's not a good time to try and move forward. Right. You'd have to respect that process needs to happen. But once a window of opportunity opens up, the airlines want to grow, FAA wants to, be on board, and there's some kind of a compelling need identified. When that happens, everybody wants to move it fast. They want it yesterday, right? So when that window opens, they want it, right away, and that is the overall challenge of aviation. But you have to understand those windows of opportunity are short-lived. Right. They don't last very long. So if you're not prepared for them when they come, you're going to miss it, right? So it's very important to mobilize a high-performance team who's willing to walk over hot coals, turn over every rock, work like a dog, and make it happen when that window of opportunity happens. So I can't tell you this success that was achieved in the last 3 years. A tremendous commitment of talent and time from an entire team of consultants and attorneys and professionals at the Chicago Department of Aviation. You have to be willing to just go like the Dickens when that window of opportunity opens up.
Well, if I know anything from knowing you over these past many, many years, it is that I have heard you preach many times. Have the right people around you and have the right plans in place so you're ready to go when the opportunity presents itself. So I would argue that the O'Hare Modernization Program and the other things you've done in Midway clearly speak to that. So again, congratulations to you on that. That's great advice. Before we let you go, just to dig a little bit deeper in the reflections, as you think about the industry and what you've seen at O'Hare and MWA and Denver and the other work you've done throughout the globe, you've hit on some of the big challenges we have on the environmental front, the safety front, the connectivity front. What do you think are the biggest challenges facing the industry? And conversely, what do you think are the biggest opportunities for the industry that we collectively should be thinking about moving forward?
Yeah. Well, the challenge, as we've talked about already, is agility. There's no question that environmental approvals and construction take years. They just do. But technology changes and changes in the economy happen very quickly. So developing plans that have built-in decision points and options is really key to being successful. I look at, there's a lot of, to me, very obvious things. I mean, it is obvious. We live in a big country that we need air service from the vast rural areas of our country. We are a connected economy, a connected people, and it is true that we can't expect private air carriers to serve unprofitable routes. It just won't work. Right. So it's a very modest investment, but the Essential Air Service Program, in my view, is a simple, easy thing to do that just needs to go forward. It's such a small amount of money, and the benefit to the rural areas of our country is just tremendous, and indeed to the overall economy. Absolutely. So there's just simple things like that, that just do it, get it out of the way, just like what I did at Midway. Just it's simple, get it out of the way. I think that we can't have a one-size-fits-all aviation program. The large hubs are carrying 85% of the traffic. They're taking the load from a lot of diminished mid-size hubs. They're taking the load from regional traffic that probably should go by rail, but we don't have any rail projects going. So their needs are very different, and they just need, I think, FAA to partner with them to move those programs quickly. I'm delighted to hear, particularly Administrator Elwell is really a champion, and he understands the need to move forward with environmental approvals properly in full consultation, but to move it forward and in order that these improvements can proceed. And we've shown in Chicago you can come up with solutions that address all the issues of the community as well as the needs of the airlines. So I think that I see heightened interest in doing that better and doing that in a more inclusive way from the administrator is a huge gain for the industry, and I encourage everyone to work with him to make that happen. I think there's a transformation happening in landside transportation. Yes. With the TNCs. TNCs and rail are ascendant. Parking is kind of on the decline. This is a huge challenge. Of course, parking has been a big part of the financial performance. It's been a big part of all of our personal lives because we love our personal cars. Huge change, huge challenge in the industry of how to address that. But where there's change, there's opportunity. And I think if you look at that way, there are solutions. I do think that there's an opportunity. By the way, I was just appointed in January to the executive committee for the Transportation Research Board. So I've been fortunate to have the benefit of all the research that they are doing in partnership with the car companies and some of the leading universities. And it is clear that there's a huge opportunity if you can integrate the TNC's encourage policies to share rides, make use of some automation in the vehicles, and even electric vehicles are really growing much faster than people realize. So I think the smart cities that provide the infrastructure for those changes in advance of those changes and the smart policies to capitalize on those, huge opportunity. Whoever does that first and best is going to realize the benefits. So I think that people who understand that, some of the large hubs are going to be saturated. There is a limit to growth, and they're land constrained. So a bunch of large hubs are going to be fully built out. That's going to create opportunity for some smaller airports. So I think to the extent that you understand the strength of your market, how does it fit in with an airline's business plans? There are opportunities there for growth as the system kind of rationalizes itself. And as international grows, there will be more and more flights to secondary U.S. cities. You've got to be smart about that. You've got to be ahead of that. You've got to be first in that game. So there are significant opportunities. Lots of important work to be done.
No shortage of opportunities or challenges before us. Before I let you go, I want to know one final question, Ginger, and that is, what's next for you personally? What are you going to do after you leave on August 1st?
Well, I'm headed straight to Colorado for my 45th high school reunion, and some time with some dear friends and family in Denver and throughout Colorado. My husband and I are headed there for a couple of weeks. And so we have a number of enjoyable events planned this fall with friends, many of them in aviation around the country. So we're going to go to Lake Tahoe for the Executive Women's Annual Conference in October. Great. And off to San Diego. And through the end of the year, just catch up. Boy, I missed an awful lot of family events in the last 3 years, Joel.
You've been very busy over the past 3 years,
but
to say the
in
least.
January, as has happened before, my husband will kind of say, okay, time for you to get out of the house. You're driving me crazy. So,
well, as we wrap up here, just want to thank you for your leadership in the industry. You're always steadfast to support AAA and everything we're doing here, and all the things you've done just for the airport industry across the board. We're thrilled, those of us who live here in Northern Virginia, that you will be moving back to Northern Virginia. So we're happy to have you back as a neighbor. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And thanks to all of you for taking time to tune in to another one-on-one. I'm Joel Bacon.